week 2 of the fantasy football season, and here's tight end start sits every matchup for the week. So Minnesota Vikings at the Eagles Thursday Night Football. TJ Hockenson, we know he's one of the best tight ends in the league. Him and Kirk Cousins have good chemistry, and he's a start each and every week. Dallas Goedert, I know last week he got shut out with the goose egg in that one, but it just was a weird game overall over there for the Eagles and New England. So I think Goddard gets back on track. Hopefully the weather's good in this one, and he's a start for me because we know Goddard, he's one of the better playmakers at the tight end position. And last week it was just a fluky type of ball game. Now to the base at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Cole Kmet came off a mediocre week 1 with over 7 fantasy points here, but he's not a tight end I could believe in and week out to put in my starting lineup. But in deeper leagues, if you got no other option, I think he's a borderline option because him and Justin Fields over the last couple seasons here are starting to get things going and getting a good rapport. But right now, if I got to start him each and every week, there's going to be some good weeks and some inconsistent weeks, and that's just the nature, obviously, of the tight end position. Besides the elite guys, now to the Bucs side of things, Cade Otton, a lot in that ball game. Baker, he's never been a big tight end target of a quarterback, so in this one, he's an easy sit for me. Now to the Packers at the Atlanta Falcons. Luke Musgrave, he looked decent in his debut as the rookie tight end, but I got to see a little bit more out of him before I say put him in your starting lineup this week. Here's Musgrave. So if he goes out there to Atlanta and has another serviceable ball game, anywhere from 7 to 10 fantasy points, I think that's a guy that you have in your starting lineup then. But right now, we'll see how he does in his second ball game. Jordan Love, he spread the football out great, no doubt about it, in that one. But Musgrave, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit and have him as a sit. Kyle Pitts, he didn't get much of an opportunity in this ball game. The Falcons just that kept running the football pretty much that whole ball game. But if they get down quick in this one to the Green Bay Packers, they're going to have to throw a lot. And we know Pitts, he's a great athlete and he can make some big plays. And we even saw him in week 1 with a huge deep ball making an athletic play. So this week, I'll give Pitts the start. But like I said, with a bad quarterback in Desmond Ridder, it could be a long season for Pitts once again. Now to the Colts at the Houston Texans. KYLEN Grayson, I know he had 4 catches in that ball game, but the tight end position's just been inconsistent year in and year out over the last few seasons over there in Indianapolis. And I have no confidence in Granson that it could be a week in and week out starter as well, so he's a sit for me. Dalton Schultz, we didn't see much out of him, and I've been saying this for a little bit now, that I think Schultz was a product of the Dallas Cowboys system, and Dak Prescott, he always liked targeting tight ends, but CJ Stroud barely looked Schultz's way. I know Schultz got paid a good contract in the offseason, but he's not really a tight end that I was big on coming into the season, and I don't see much changing, so he's a sit for me. Now to Seattle Seahawks at the Lions. Noah Fant, him and Geno, they really don't have a rapport, and they run 2 or 3 different tight ends out there as well in Seattle, so that's just going to be an inconsistent spot at the tight end position all season, I believe, over there in Seattle like it was last season. So Font is a sit for me. And now to the Lions, the rookie Sam Laporte, he looked pretty decent and pretty much the number 2 option in the receiving game. Him and Josh Reynolds, if you want to pick one, behind obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Sam Laporte, we know he's a pretty high draft pick for this Detroit Lion team, and he looked good obviously with 9 fantasy points in PPR leagues in week 1. So right now, with him being one of the main options on that offense, I think he's a guy that could crack the top 12 at the tight end position, and in a good matchup and a potential shootout indoors in Detroit, he's a start for me. Now to the Chargers at the Tennessee Titans. Gerald Everett, he didn't do much in that ball game, and now he's going to be more inconsistent with the more weapons added in this passing game over here in Los Angeles for the Chargers. So Everett, I was pretty decent on him coming in as the year as a sleeper, but inconsistency is going to be there, so he's a sit for me. And Chigga Kongwa, we know he's an athletic tight end. We know he could go out there and make plays, but after coming off a goose egg and he's in an inconsistent offense, it's not like a Dallas Goedert situation where you know he's going to make plays and going to get the football. It was just a one fluky week. Kongwa, he's not in that type of offense. And Ryan Tannehill is one of the worst starters, I believe, in the league. A lot of head throws, a lot of interceptions we've seen him throw over the last couple seasons. And right here, I have him as a sit as a Kongwa this week. Now to the Ravens at the Bengals. Obviously, if Mark Andrews plays in this ball game, he's a must start in the top 3 tight end week in and week out. So if he's back in this game, it's going to help the offense as a whole. And I think the thinking over here was for this Baltimore Raven team, we'll sit Andrews out week 1. We should still win versus Houston, which they did. And now in a big division matchup, even though I know it's only week 2, you want to play some good football. And if the Ravens can win and beat Cincinnati here, that's already a 2-game lead over them. So I think Andrews plays and he's a must start. And now to the Bengals side of things, I think Irv Smith Jr., as the year goes on, could have a consistent role in this offense here with the Cincinnati Bengals team. But right now, he's another guy that's been inconsistent and injury-prone throughout his career. He's an easy sit this week. Now to the Raiders at the Buffalo Bills. Mays, we didn't see much out of him in that ball game, so he's a sit for me. In this Raider offense, it's going to be tough to trust many guys on it besides Adams, Jacobs, and Jacoby Myers for some weeks. So right here, Mayer, he's a sit in this ball game. And now to the Bills side of things, Dalton Kincaid, he made a few plays in that Week 1 ball game at the New York Jets, but not enough consistency where I'm going to definitely put him out there as a starter. So to me, he's a borderline option. And him and Dawson Knox, pretty much a lot of 2 tight end sets for the first time we've seen this Buffalo Bill team run, where they used to go 3-4 wide a lot running that offense. But anyway, Dawson Knox, he had a few good plays in this one, but it's tough to choose who you're really going to want to play. So he's a sit for me with Kincaid being borderline. Now to the Chiefs at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Kelce, they figured we'll sit him out in this ball game, get him 10 days rest, make sure he's well, and I think he's going to come back, especially after losing in Week 1 to the Detroit Lions. He has this Kansas City Chiefs team, and this is a big ball game. I know it's Week 2, but this is 2 playoff teams, no doubt about it, from last season. Obviously a rematch, and if Kelce plays, he's a must-start and the best tight end in football. And Evan Ingram, he's a start for me as well. Him and Trevor Lawrence really have good chemistry over the last season here. And Evan Ingram, he had a pretty decent Week 1 ball game with 9.90 fantasy points. And right here, he could take the middle of the field up a little bit in this one. And now with Calvin Ridley coming back after being suspended and looking like he didn't miss a beat, more defenses, they're going to have to roll coverage towards Ridley way, and it could open things up even more here. So I think Ingram has a good game, and we just saw Sam Laporta get 8.90 fantasy points versus defense. Now to the Niners at the Rams, both tight ends I like in this game. George Kittle, we know he's an athlete. We know him and Purdy have a good rapport, especially in the red zone, so George Kittle's a star for me. And tight end's been an up and down position for seasons where Kittle's always in the top 5. Anyway, Tyler Higbee, he's a start. He had a decent ball game in Week 1. And this Ram offense, they were pretty solid, to be honest, at Seattle, even with Cooper Kupp out. So Higbee, I think, could work the middle of the field a little bit. And this could be a ball game early and often where they're trailing and trying to catch points is the Rams, where they got to throw a whole lot. So Higbee's a start. This week now to the Giants at Arizona Cardinals. Darren Waller, he was one of the only bright spots in that 40-0 blowout where the Giants couldn't do anything in that ball game. But Waller, he made a few good plays. He looked good on the perimeter, and that hamstring held up luckily in the rain. So he's a star for me, and I think he could pick apart this defense over there in Arizona. And Zach Ertz, borderline option. Ertz, no matter what, he finds his way to get targets. He had 5 catches, 21 yards in the ball game. And for most tight ends, that's still a pretty decent game compared to what we saw in Week 1. But right here at the New York Giants coming to town, it's good. It's an indoor ball game. But I still can't trust Ertz as a start each and every week. But if he could get it going the next couple weeks here, he'll get in the starting conversation once again. But he's borderline this week. Now to the Jets at the Cowboys. Tyler Conklin, he'll have some games here and there, but versus a tough Dallas Cowboy defense. And now with Zach Wilson, the quarterback, once again over there for the Jets, you can't trust him. He's a sit. And Jake Ferguson, I think he'll have some games as the season goes on for Dallas. But in Week 1, he had a couple drops. They didn't do much over there offensively since the defense pretty much put that ball game on ice early and often with some defensive plays and touchdowns. So Ferguson is a sit for me versus a tough Jet defense. Now to the Commanders at the Broncos. Logan Thomas, he's a sit for me in this one. We really haven't seen much out of him. And there's a rotation over there as well for this Commander team at the tight end position. So he's a sit, and Greg Dulcich is a sit as well. We saw Trotman get a decent amount of run in this ball game, where I think Dulcich's the better playmaker and obviously receiver at the tight end position. But now they're going to run a 2-man rotation as well, and 2 tight end sets, it looks like, over there for this Denver Bronco team. And Dulcich's a sit. Now to the Dolphins at the New England Patriots. Durham Smythe, he had a decent ball game in Week 1 for this Miami Dolphin team, and he could be a guy that's going to go uncovered a lot, where he could just work the middle of the field here, obviously where defense is rolling coverage all the way to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So Smythe is a big target, and the guy in the middle of the field here in the red zone as well could be a decent fantasy option, but I got to see a little bit more out of him before I say put him in the starting lineup each and every week. So he's borderline option. And Hunter Henry, I'm going to give him the nod in this one. We saw a good Week 1 ball game, 5 catches, 56 yards and a touchdown. And this week here, if this Patriot team want to win this ball game, obviously they got to rely on the defense, and they got to rely on making some plays and finding the end zone. And Hunter Henry and Mac Jones have had a decent chemistry over the last couple seasons. So I think Hunter Henry, he's a start for me. I'm not going to say he's going to go out there, obviously, and get over 15 fantasy points once again in PPR leagues, but I think he's a tight end that could get 7 to 8 fantasy points in this one. And sometimes that's just good enough, the way the position's been over the last few seasons. Now to the first Monday night game, New Orleans Saints at the Panthers. Both of these guys are borderline options. Juwan Johnson, we didn't see much out of him in week 1, and we saw a lot of 3 wide receiver sets by the same team, obviously with Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and Rashid Shaheed for this team. So right now, Johnson, there'll be some games where he's going to find the end zone and have 50, 60 yards. But this week, yeah, I think they could see the running game have a good one. This New Orleans Saints team. So Johnson's borderline, and Hayden Hurst, who had a good week 1 debut with this Panther team where he had 41 yards and a touchdown. But I'm not going to throw him out there as well as a start just because he's coming off of one good game as a borderline option. I could say he is Hayden Hurst. But right now, I don't have confidence he'll go in there week in and week out and be a guy in the top 12 to start. So he's borderline for me in the last game of the week in the doubleheader of Monday night. The Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. David Njoku, he pretty much didn't do much in that week 1 ball game. And I wasn't a big Njoku guy coming into the season because he's another tight end where people, I think, are ranking him just a little bit too high, where there'll be games he'll be good, no doubt about it. And then he'll put in dud games like he did a lot as well in week 1 where he only had 4.5 fantasy points. So right now, he's a borderline option to me versus a pretty solid Pittsburgh Steelers defense. And not a guy I could trust week in and week out. And now to the Steelers, Pat Freiermuth, he's a start. As long as he's going to play in this game. I know it's Monday night, so that extra day of rest definitely will help. And he's one of the main targets and a young quarterback's security blanket in Kenny Pickett is Freiermuth. So right now, as long as he plays in this ball game and we get good practice reports throughout the week, he's a start. So that's tight end start sits every matchup for week 2 of the fantasy football season.